Hey, Chandler Bolt here, and in this video I want to walk you through my end-of-year goal setting process and also my end-of-year reflection process. All right, so I'm going to start this video with a disclaimer, and that is that I know that there are way more complicated ways to do an end-of-year goal setting process. I believe in keeping things simple, and there's just power in stopping to pause and reflect and to plan. So maybe you're watching this video, it's the end of the year or the beginning of the next year, or maybe it's in the middle of the year, in which case you can do this and set yourself up for an excellent back half of the year. So I think that one of the most powerful parts of this process is that you reflect on the past and you plan the future. So it's super simple. This whole process end to end, it will probably take you 60 minutes, maybe a couple hours if you really want to walk through this. But I do this at the end of every year. Sometimes it's on a flight or a trip, coming back from vacation or going to vacation with my family. I take that time and really think about, hey, did this year unfold the way I wanted it to? What were the wins? What were the milestones? What were all those things? I'm going to get into that in just one second. But then also, let me look ahead and say a year from now, what would success look like? So that's what I want to walk you through. It's very simple, somewhat primitive, but it's highly effective, and it's worked well for me. So it all starts with reviewing last year. And there's really kind of four main buckets of things that I'm reviewing. Number one is I'm reviewing my progress on my goals and my intention for the year, which I'll kind of talk about what that looks like in just 1 minute. But if you're doing this process for the first time, maybe you don't have that. Maybe you had goals or New Year's resolutions or whatever. Maybe you don't, in which case you can just skip this and dive into the next piece. Now, the next thing is I want to walk through wins and celebrations. And I think this is super important. And it's important for me because I often don't take enough time to stop and smell the roses, to celebrate wins, to truly look at how far I've come. So this is the place that this starts. And I want to go through, hey, what were the major wins? What were the milestones? What were the things we're celebrating? Maybe it was experiences with my family. Maybe it was milestones in my business. Maybe it was things that I'd never done before that I thought I'd never get to do, but I got to do those things, right? So really just take a moment to pause and say, what were all the wins, successes? And to do this, a lot of times I like to go through the calendar. It's I'll go through the year and oh man, yeah, I forgot. I went on this trip. We hit this record in the business. This was a record student success month. We had this live event for the first time. We launched this blog. We completed our first acquisition. What are all the wins and milestones from the past year? Now, the third thing is I like to dive into lessons learned. So this is maybe what are the things that I really learned over the last year that I want to build on and carry into the next year? So sometimes these are tough reflections. Maybe it's I learned these the hard way. Maybe it's I learned these because things went really well. But a lot of times it's what are the key lessons that I've learned? And this is, really just cementing, okay, these are things that I want to build on. And just by writing it down, I'm turning the page and kind of cementing that learning. Where it's one thing to think that you learned something, but it's another thing to actually reflect and then write it down. And for me, at least, that's when it becomes real, is when I've said, oh yeah, I guess I did learn that. And now I'm able to acknowledge that thing and note that thing, and I can be aware of it and move into the next year with that awareness. And then the fourth and final thing in terms of last year is strengths to foster. I'm a big fan of the Strength Finders, if you've ever heard of that, kind of one of the personality tests. But I really like to look at, hey, what are the major strengths that I have that I need to double down on in the next year? So I'll reflect back over the last year and say, hey, what were strengths that maybe I built? What were strengths that I discovered that I didn't know were strengths? But as a whole, what are strengths that I have that I need to foster and double down on over the next year? And now we're moving into this coming year. And really what I want to look at, and at the top of the doc, is what are my top 3 goals and what's my intention for the year? Okay, now again, I know there are way more complicated ways to do this, and you might be thinking, top 3 goals, oh my gosh, how can you only have 3 goals for an entire year? Well, I know for me personally, we have a company goal setting process. So we're going to set our big 5 goals for the year. We're going to set our key thrusts, key initiatives for the quarter, all that stuff. I have no trouble planning my goals for my business. And so for me, what that looks like is I might have an income goal. I have a goal of, it's been my goal for the last 2 or 3 years is making progress on retiring my parents. And then I might have a relationship goal. Right? And so it's kind of if you think holistically, 360 degrees of your life, maybe you think Wheel of Life if you've ever been through a Wheel of Life exercise, but holistically, hey, what are the top 3 things that I'm really aiming for this year? And then, and this is really important to me, is what's my intention for the year? And now what's an intention? Oh, that sounds a little bit woo-woo, like, oh my gosh, what is that? Well, an intention is kind of like, what's my focus? What's my North Star? And now, depending on the year, I try to focus that intention on the biggest bottleneck for me personally. So every year, at the end of the year, I try to take personal inventory and say, hey, for me personally, what is the biggest bottleneck in my abilities, my skill sets, or whatever that's keeping me from achieving the goals that I want to achieve, that's keeping me from having the life that I want to live, things like that. So back in 2016, at the end of 2016, I had one of my first employees, like big time employees, quit. And he said, Chandler, I just don't agree with your leadership style. And we are not compatible. And so that was kind of a kick in the pants for me. And I said, oh man, I need to become a better leader. I realized that I just sucked as a leader, and like this is something that I needed to address. So my intention for all of 2017 was leadership. So I read books around leadership. I went through courses around leadership. Everything I was looking was through the lens of how can I become a better leader? And then the next year, the intention or the theme was the year of developing others. So then I looked at it and I said, hey, I think the bottleneck for my success in business and life and all those things is to develop the people around me. So that was my intention. This year, it's all about the year of value, and it's all about adding value. And so I took inventory and I said, you know what? I don't like the way I'm showing up in some of my relationships and from a business perspective and all that. So I want to be way more intentional about adding value in every interaction that I have. I said, hey, let's be super intentional. For my company, here's what that looks like. For my employees, here's how I add value. For our customers, here's how I add value. For my personal relationships, like, am I showing up and adding value? And are people around me, are their lives better because they're in a relationship with me, right? And am I adding value to those people and appreciating the people around me? So that's my intention for this year. So you got your top 3 goals and you got your intention. And then we move into a stop doing list. Now, maybe you've heard me talk about this concept, but I believe that there is no shortage of start doings. And every time someone goes through this yearly goal setting process, it's like they've got like 1 million New Year's resolutions. They've got 50 goals. It's like, I'm going to conquer the world. Everything's happening this year. This is the year 2020 vision. It's all happening. And then everything comes crashing down 2 weeks later, a month later. They feel so guilty that they just fully fall off the wagon. So this, for me personally, this is why I don't believe in New Year's resolutions. I believe in reflection and goal setting. But even more so, like if we're crystallizing that, if you're going to make room for the new, you've got to put some things to bed, put some things to rest, and stop doing a lot of things that you're currently doing. So that's where, as part of this process, I say, hey, this year, if I'm going to hit these goals, if I'm going to have this intention, if I'm going to make progress, like what are the things in my life that aren't serving me? What are the things that I need to stop doing? Maybe it's spending so much time on Facebook. Maybe it's watching Netflix. Maybe it's staying cooped up in my house so often, right? Maybe it's negative self-talk. Maybe it's not appreciating the people around me, right? And honestly, a lot of these are just ones that I've had in the past, right? So think about, what is that for you? Like, what are the things that you need to stop doing over this next year to make room for the new? And then next, we move into the do more of list. So what are the things I want to do more of? And these are the things that enrich my life. These are the things that add value. These are the things that give me life, that give me energy. So maybe it's I want to do more of getting outside. Maybe it's I want to do more of game nights and spending intentional time with friends. Maybe it's I want to do more of blocking off my mornings for reading. I want to do more of insert the things that's important to you. And so we've kind of got this dichotomy of where maybe I'm saying, hey, I need to stop doing eating junk food, and I need to do more of being intentional about what I'm eating. Or maybe, for me in the past has been, I need to stop traveling so much. So I need to limit my out-of-state travel to once or twice per month, because that's not serving me. That's not helping me create the life that I want to live. And then when I am in town, I need to do more of being intentional about time with the people that I care about. Now, another thing I like to add is kind of fun goals or bucket list items. And this is just kind of fun little place to dream a little bit. And my mom's always made the joke. She said, Chandler, you don't have a bucket list because you just do it. If you want to do something, you don't put it on your bucket list, you just do it. And I think this is kind of a little bit of part of that process is, hey, what are the things I've dreamed about? Maybe it's, get my pilot's license. Maybe it's, off-road BMW ultimate driving experience. Maybe it's, meeting Dabo Sweeney of the Clemson football team. Like just thinking all these fun things. And I'm like, oh man, if I stopped and thought about it, that would be really, really cool. Maybe it's, for me, a lot of times it's creating meaningful experiences with my family. like taking my dad to amazing experiences, taking my mom to amazing experiences. And so just writing out that list, I know, sure, yeah, I probably won't hit a lot of these, but when I can filter opportunities throughout the year. And if I have opportunities to do those things, I'm going to do those things. So it's kind of fun to where you can integrate your bucket list or your far off, maybe someday like, hey, I'd love to do this. And you can look at it and say, hey, what's one or maybe two that I want to do this year? And you can get clear on that. And then one of the last things that I do here is create my top 10 or top 20 people in my life and people in my city. Now, this is a really important process for me. As my business has grown in success, as I've grown in success, I've moved around a bunch. Like you start to build all of these relationships. And I don't know, maybe you've experienced this kind of like I have, but you're getting all these emails, you're getting all these text messages, Facebook messages, all those things. And at some point you get overwhelmed. It's like, man, I can't possibly respond to all these people. So then you start to feel guilty. They talk about this in the one thing. It's like, chaos. And so naturally our brains resist chaos. And so as a defense mechanism, we'll shrink our level of success to what we feel like we can handle. And sometimes though, for me, it meant giving myself permission not to respond to people. And narrowing in on, I realized that somewhere along the way, I was trying to respond to everyone and I was trying to deepen relationships with everyone. And as a result, I was losing sight of the people who were most important to me and most important in my life. So what I do is I go through and I say, hey, who are the top 20 people in my life in order of importance? It's super important. So I go through and I say, hey, these are my top 20 people. And now I know if I get a text from this person, if I get a call from this person, like it doesn't matter if I've got 600 unread text messages like I do right now on my phone, but I've responded to the people on that list who are most important to me. Right? So it's super important. And this is kind of, throughout the year, you can hang this up. You can be intentional about this because then this is someone I want to be super intentional about deepening relationships with. And then I kind of have a second list for me personally. This is a lot of, because I've moved around a lot. And I'll say, hey, who are the top, I'm living in Los Angeles right now. Who are the top 10 or 15 people in my life in Los Angeles? Because I realized what was happening is when I moved around so much, I've got these deep, meaningful relationships, but they're not in the city that I live in. So then I'm getting lonely. I'm like, oh man, I don't feel like I have community here. I don't feel like I'm plugged in. I don't have people I can hang out with, all those things. So I try to be intentional about the people in my city and also rank those in order of importance. Now, lastly, the last thing I do here is I list out potential mentors to invest in. Okay, so I know that along the year, maybe there's some skill sets that I'm trying to develop, or there's some people that I want to learn from. So I just make a simple list of those folks. So again, if throughout the year opportunities present themselves, I know, this is someone or an area that I've thought about investing in myself. And so I want to develop, learn, and grow in this area or with this person. So there you have it. That's my goal setting and reflection process. I'd encourage you to do this right now. Seriously, like right after you finish this video, right after you listen to this podcast episode, right after it or tonight before you go to bed, take 30 minutes and just get a rough draft and then integrate this into your yearly reflection and goal setting process. It's gonna make all the difference. Now, one last thing that I do here is I've got a Microsoft Word doc and I save that Word doc and put it on my desktop. Because now you're going to take the time, you're going to go through this process, but what if it's just outside, out of mind, right? And then next year you're like, oh shoot, here are all those things that I wanted to do, all the people I wanted to spend time with, things I wanted to do more of, the bucket list items, and I didn't even look at it. So print it out, and I'd recommend that you put it somewhere where you can see it every single day, but then also put it on your desktop so that you can open it throughout the year and make sure, kind of check in and seeing how you're doing. So that's it. It's like I said, it's simple. It's not complicated. It's not 500 goals, but I really truly believe that if you go through this reflection process and if you go through this goal setting process, you're going to get better every year and you're going to focus on what's most important. So comment below, let me know what were your takeaways from this video. What were your favorite things, the things that you liked or things that were maybe new? Or what's your process? So what does your yearly goal setting process look like? I'm sure I'm going to get some complicated 15-page exercises, workbooks, all that stuff. Love looking at that stuff. Always looking to make minor improvements while also keeping things simple. But either way, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. So take 2 minutes right now, for real. Comment on this video. Yes, you. Yeah. Comment right below. Let me know your takeaways, your process, all those things. Then as always, click the like button and click the subscribe button on this channel or on this podcast. And I'll see you in the next video.